Since the end of last year, Intel's been running a pretty aggressive campaign, increasingly so really, against Apple's new M1 chips, the ones in the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini. And today, maybe unexpectedly, I want to tell you why Intel kind of has a point. Hi everybody, welcome back to A Better Computer. My name is Matt. And before you hit the dislike button and quit out of this video and tell me why I'm an Intel fanboy and this is a sponsored Intel video, I will say up front, this is definitely not a sponsored video by Intel. Intel has no idea making it. This is just something I wanted to say myself. If you did want to learn what my policies are around sponsorships and kind of what sort of content I've released so far on this channel, I've tried to be very open about it in the past, but if you are interested, I'll put a minute at the end of this video. I'll put a timestamp here where you can just jump to it if you'd like to see what my policy is. So Intel busted out the big guns this week, bringing out Justin Long out of his retirement from Apple advertising to actually do basically the Verizon guy.
Can you hear that?
Switching sides. Now he's talking on Intel's side, talking about why Windows PCs are the thing to get and why Apple Macs are trash. And so, you know, this has ruffled some people's feathers, but I wanted to talk about some of the things in Intel's campaign, both in terms of these like benchmarks that they've run and shared and how they're using this new campaign with Justin Long to really, I mean, obviously they're trying to get under people's skin with this, especially Apple fanboys, and it seems to be working. But yeah, I want to talk about some of the points they make and some of the things that I think Intel gets right, but essentially some of the things they get very, very wrong. So I'm going to hit the points in a second here, but I did want to say one of the things that I think really sucks about conversing online is that it really drives us to have one opinion or another and back one horse 100%. So if we're Apple fans, it really makes it so it's hard online, it seems, to discuss Apple in any way that's not 100% positive. If Microsoft says something, we have to hate it. If Google says something, we have to hate it. If Intel says something, now we have to hate it. And this goes not just for Apple, but for all companies. Google fans are the same way. We talk about this in politics. We have this in like media, like, right? Like you have these things where like The Last Jedi is a good example. Whether you like that movie or dislike that movie, the discourse is really not around the, well, I like this part and I don't like that part. The discourse is really, this is the best thing ever made, or this is absolute trash and the whole Star Wars franchise should be destroyed because it exists. That's where a lot of discussion is, and I think that we lose a lot of nuance, and I think the nuance is absolutely essential. So hopefully this video gets that across. All right, so I'm going to pull up my notes here, and let's see. So some of the things I think Intel has legit points about. More hardware choice. Obviously, yeah, there is more choice when you buy a Windows computer. You have many more manufacturers doing it. You have many more just options when you're doing that. That's totally legit. Two-in-one devices, that kind of is along the same lines. If you want something that can fold around and act kind of like an iPad, like a tablet, then you can do that. You can get those devices. If you don't want that, you don't have to get that. Again, there's much more choice in terms of hardware. There's touchscreens, again, kind of the same thing. I want to be able to touch my device. It is kind of crazy, like Apple's going to break eventually. They're going to give us touchscreen Macs. It's crazy, like how many devices are in your life and how many of them have touchscreens? Things you bought in the last couple of years, if it has a screen, can you touch it? Yeah, you almost certainly can. Macs are really the one holdout, the major holdout, I should say, that just don't have touchscreens. And I think it'll come eventually, but yeah, as of right now, if you want a touchscreen on your laptop, and lots of people do, the Mac doesn't have it. Games is a huge one. Obviously, people don't really buy Macs for games. Is this a chicken and egg thing? Like, do people not buy Macs for games because the games aren't there? Who knows? But yeah, absolutely. Games do run better on Windows computers in general. That's because DirectX and Vulkan and these sorts of APIs are available on Windows and on these this hardware. I will say that especially when you come into high-end gaming, a lot of and even these high-end laptops, a lot of the reasons these games run better is not because of Intel, it's because of NVIDIA GPUs or AMD GPUs. That's all something, and it's kind of interesting because Intel talks about gaming here, but really AMD is smoking them in a lot of gaming benchmarks recently on the CPU side. So this one's kind of messy, but definitely if you want to play games on your laptop, I do find it harder to recommend a Mac. And then you've got external GPU support, more monitors. Right now the M1 Macs only support one monitor up to 4K or 5K, 6K. Geez, whatever, I think 6K through the Apple Cinema display. But yeah, so these are all definitely limitations. A Windows device will get you more monitors. You can do external GPUs. All of these things are advantages. So if those things are important to you, then yeah, those are things you want to hear about. And if that's not important to you, then maybe you don't want to hear about it. But it's definitely a thing for people, and just because you don't care about it doesn't mean it's not a valid point. But just because Intel has some good points, it doesn't mean these are perfect. These are definitely not tests coming from an objective third party who's just trying to find what's the best device for everyone. Outside of little things like, of course, they tested things and only showed the results from things where they came out ahead, it's also worth noting pretty fundamentally that Intel is comparing this wide swath of PC hardware versus the worst computers Apple is ever going to make going forward. Apple's not going to make a worse MacBook Air than they have today. This is this computer that I absolutely love, that is absolutely super fast, that smokes my high-end 2015 MacBook Pro that runs an Intel processor, ironically. This is going to suck. Like this sucks in comparison to what Apple has coming. And that's incredible. That is a really remarkable thing. So Intel is throwing a whole swath of devices at the M1 Max, but the M1 Max, we have to remember, are Apple's entry-level devices. We're only a couple months into this transition, and the fast computers are still coming. Another thing not mentioned in these is that noise. These computers, the ones that they're running these like high-end tests on, they have fans that make a lot of noise. One of the big selling points of the M1 Max is that they stay very quiet, very cool in your lap. I have a MacBook Air, it has no fan. It makes literally no noise. It can't make noise. It cannot make noise, and that is incredible. That's an incredible value to me as a user. Again, it's not something you can benchmark really easily. I guess you can measure fan noise, but you don't usually see that. But the idea that these computers are basically silent, even the ones with fans stay super quiet and super chill on your lap, that's a really good selling point. That's a quality of life thing that, again, they don't talk about, because the fans on those Intel CPUs or on those Intel devices are surely blasting and making a lot of noise. Again, not a thing that is included in the benchmarks, but is definitely, as a user, something I'd want to know. And then there's the fact that they just switch out devices based on what does the best for whatever test they're doing. So for the benchmark tests, they bust out these more expensive computers that cost significantly more than the Macs that they're comparing them to. But they bust out these higher-end laptops for the performance tests, and they say, here, we're 20% faster here, we're double the speed here, we do all that. And then they get to the battery test, and they crank it down to a much lower cost, much lower power device, and then that one does better in the battery test. Also in the battery test, when they were doing the MacBook Pro for a lot of the performance stuff, they do the MacBook Air for the battery test, because the MacBook Air has significantly less battery capacity than the MacBook Pro. So the MacBook Pro would have won the battery test by a lot. The MacBook Air in their test came out basically neck and neck, although it did still technically win by a few minutes. But it was really, obviously they're picking the device that's going to make them look the best. Also really worth noting, and this is just maybe a testament to some of the attention to detail in these tests, is that in the picture they show for battery life, and they specifically say this is a MacBook Air, it's a picture of a MacBook Pro. I know that's not the most important thing in the world, and it's just a disconnect somewhere, but I think it kind of speaks to why some people, why I can actually sort of get some of the righteous anger that people have at these. Is like what are they doing? Like they're changing out devices, they're stacking the deck in their favor, and even when they do, they make these pictures that don't match up with what they're saying, like what their words say, what their test shows. So yeah, that's kind of frustrating too. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about the Intel stuff right now, because once they ended Justin Long, I couldn't ignore it. I had to talk about it. I mean, from Justin's perspective, I mean, whatever. Like, it's advertising. I'm sure he's getting a nice payday, and I don't blame him at all. So I have no beef with Justin Long at all in this. I'm sure it's fun for him to have this gig, especially when, for the last year we've been in lockdown, and the movie industry and TV industry has really been hit. I don't blame actors for taking sort of advertising roles like this that get them paid. So yeah, that's just my take on the Justin Long thing. That's my take on the Intel comparisons. I think they do have some good points, but they're definitely not being as objective as they're trying to put out. It is a marketing campaign, obviously. I'll put links to their site, some of the ads that they're doing as well, in the show notes, so you can check them out yourself. If you think I'm wrong, always let me know in the comments. I do try to stick around there a little bit after each video post and reply to as many as I can. But until next time, I'll see you here on A Better Computer. Okay, so a quick update on what I do with sponsored content, how I treat it, how I do things on the channel. So I will always explicitly tell you up front if I am doing sponsored content. I will definitely say it at the start of the video. I'll do the paid promotions thing that pops up on videos. And I will try to, unless there's some reason not to, but I should be putting that sponsored tag in the video title. So I plan on doing all of those. I will tell you right now, I have done 0 sponsored content. I've done over 100 videos on this channel. Not a single one has been sponsored. So every single video you've seen me make has been 100% my own opinion, has been 100% things that I wanted to talk about. People aren't paying me to say any of the things that you've seen me say. They're just my opinions, and I like that to be the primary thing on the channel. I'm still small, and I do hope to continue to grow, and as things as the channel grows, I do expect to have sponsorship opportunities come up that I would want to take on. I will say I have had a few people reach out to me about sponsorships, and I've turned them all down so far, specifically because they're things that I just don't believe in. So I don't want to do sponsored content for things that I don't actually support. So if I do sponsored content in the future, I can commit to not shilling things that are trash. I will try to, if I do sponsored content, only do things that I actually believe in and actually feel good about sharing with you guys, because I want this channel to always be a place where you can rely on hearing me speak my mind. And so that's what I will try to be. I'll try to be as honest and open as possible at all times. And again, so far I've done 0 sponsored content. I've done 0 paid anything, really. I've made 100% of my money for this channel through AdSense revenue on ads that you see before the videos, and on that wallpaper pack I recently released. So I'm 100% really supported by you guys, and I really, really appreciate that. I really appreciate everyone who watches these videos, and yeah, let's keep it going. So thank you again for watching.